Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell. I'm your host. I'm the owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona. And my co host is Dr. Brian Wolf, owner of Evolution Physical Therapy in Connecticut and Long Island. How are we doing today, Brian?
I'm good, man. How are you? How's it going? I'm excited for this one. This is a as you put it so elegantly. This is a clickbaity one. This is good.
Oh, yeah. So we are
Selling out to the
talking.
man. Well, I guess not the man. Technically, if it's AI, technically not the man, right?
I know, right? The robot is the
The
man.
robot
So,
man.
so if you did not see the title, we will be talking about how AI is going to change physical therapy or just healthcare in general. Really, a lot of the stuff that we've been discussing in the pre-show, we really could place it on a lot of different clinics and businesses. But specifically, we are physical therapists. A lot of people that listen to this, so we will be referencing it back to that. But keep in mind, this could be a doctor's office. This could be anything. Now, the interesting thing is when we came on and we discussed what are we gonna talk about. Brian was jacked up for this episode. He has been thinking about this all week. So, Brian, tell me why you're excited to talk about AI and what it's going to do for PT.
I love that. So I told Owen, I don't know about all week, and I didn't think about it, but so one of the things that I thought about was I was using Chat GPT to help me with some copywriting stuff, and it made me start thinking about how it's made I can we've talked a lot about marketing and Facebook
Yeah.
marketing specifically, and that is where it's really helped me a ton, because I can remember when I first started doing this, how frustrating this process was, because one of the things about private policies and things that you need to do when you're advertising on Facebook is you need to make sure there's certain words you aren't using. So the thing
Yeah.
about AI is, if you just plug in AI, like write something for Facebook for this, it automatically puts in the parameters of it's not going to violate any of those policies. So
Yeah.
it was, I mean, again, like just banging my head against the wall this morning for an hour and a half, 2 hours, trying to put stuff in from a perspective of, I'm trying to like target everything. And again, remember when I first started doing this, there was no AI, it didn't exist. So on the flip side, Facebook uses an AI now to actually scan everything.
Yeah.
So what's funny is it's actually really beneficial on both sides. So I,
Mhm.
I use it for the copywriting, and I realized, like, when I in the right before this episode, I published it and processed it, and about 20 minutes into us talking on the pre-show, I had already got my ad actively approved. And
Oh,
so I just
nice.
remember how demoralizing it was as a solopreneur going through this process, only to see it like failed, like rejected, because of like you're speaking to something. And now, because of using AI, that doesn't happen, and it also writes the copyright way faster. So I've just understood that some of the things that we're using with AI, and I'm by no means an expert. I will be, in fact, actually, we've talked about it. I actually have a friend who is, and has a company, and I would love to have him on. I'm sure he'd come on. So if people are interested in this episode and want to learn more about it, we can bring on John and talk more specifically about specific strategies that we think that AI would help physical
Mhm.
therapists. But
Well, and
but
that's
yeah,
and that's that's the question I'm sitting here thinking, right? I obviously, I'm a solopreneur. I'm dipping my toe in the content water, but not at a level that someone who's running multiple clinics will need to be kind of hands on with marketing across all platforms. But I'm thinking about this like, man, I'm a PT. Like, what is it going to do? It's not going to replace my hands, right? I'm going to get business either way. Nobody wants to do, I mean, we saw telehealth is now a part of the market where it wasn't before, but it's not like I'm losing my job to a guy in Montana doing telehealth in Arizona. Um, so how is the average physical therapist or the average clinician going to be affected by this? And maybe not so much. I think the content creation we're definitely going to go more in depth on because a lot of people listening to this are, but like, is this going to take my job? Is that like, what do you see going forward? Like,
yeah,
how's my boss, right, or somebody going to use this?
yeah. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, there's 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 a lot of people, when you read about any of this stuff, I don't think it's taking over physical therapy jobs. I think what's going to end up happening is those mundane, repetitive jobs that we all see that are kind of annoyingly mundane,
Mhm.
will be replaced by AI long term. But like, again, the creativity of human beings in medicine, and particularly like the hands-on skill to that, looking through other things, like, I think of it kind of like the way you described it was think about when you were studying for your OCS. And I always tell this
Mhm.
story, and I'd be curious if you actually had the same. And now we're getting off topic, but when I
Yeah,
was
it's fine.
studying for my OCS and I was learning that stuff. I remember thinking at one point because I was so
Mhm.
research driven that some of my treatment sessions weren't as good. And then I had the patients that weren't getting better because I wasn't adding a little bit of a flair of the creativity. And if you think about it, it's because we're pushing the envelope on some of our anecdotal feedback and some of the people that we've seen in the past that where like I'm like, oh well, so this person got better with this, even though like it doesn't have a research study on it. And I think that's gonna be a limitation of AI is it's not gonna be able to think like that. It's not gonna be able to think creativity. In now it will be able to pass the OCS with a perfect score in 2 seconds. So that's where it can be beneficial. Is it's gonna look up stuff and
Yeah,
teach you how to do things. So like I think if you said, hey, can you help me with the clinical guidelines of how to treat low back pain? It'll give you the cookie cutter answer, but we also know that there are nuances to that. And I think that's where it's gonna
yeah,
struggle. And so then to your point, you're gonna have to still do manual therapy. You're gonna still have to program stuff. There's a human element, right? I'm still gonna have to talk to
yeah,
people, right? Like I'm still gonna, there's a placebo effect in that, and the fact that I'm
yeah,
coaxing and reassuring and doing that process, making decisions that are a little different. So building trust, that's something
yeah,
that I'm sure in the beginning AI will not do a good job of. So I don't think it will ever replace
yeah.
physical therapy. However, I think it will streamline a lot of things. And I think as somebody who runs a clinic and does advertising and does different components, it should in theory be really positive for us because it'll streamline things for us.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. It'll be a much better tool, but it won't be the carpenter, right?
Yes.
And you see, throughout history, right? The internet did this. Microsoft Excel is famous for this. There were so many people that were put out of jobs because they just needed a job to like count stuff. And then
Yeah.
once Excel came out, the people who did the counting got retrained in different things and got better, more productive jobs. But the accountants, they were just way more productive, right?
Yes.
So the hope is that, as a physical therapist, we retain our value to the patient. But at the same time, like you said, that mundane stuff. I'm waiting for Musk's Neuralink to get in my brain and do my documentation for me. That'd be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, and like there's a great example of something like think about that, dude. Like to your point about documentation, like
Mhm.
how many PTs that are probably listening to this and doing this stuff are like, fuck documentation, man. Like it's just so true. But imagine if you were like, if you could like to your point about dictation, remember that? Like when we first started, like I bet that's still happening, right? People like are
Yeah,
calling on the phone and dictating so someone can write their notes for them. I
yeah,
remember then going through all the edits on the notes. I was like, this is the
yeah,
dumbest thing that we're doing. Like, what are we
yeah.
doing? It's right. And so to your point about AI, imagine if I was like, hey, write a specific non-specific low back pain evaluation. Here are the objective measures. Boom, 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 boom. Can you write this for me in the
Yeah,
same format that I did on this person? And like then it
yeah,
learns. Oh my god, man! Like, could you
yeah.
imagine? Like, I mean, that's exciting. Like to your point about why did I get excited? Like, because it's going to take care of all the mundane, dumb shit we don't want to do, right? Like, we want to treat patients. We want to be
Yeah.
there. Like, it. In a lot of ways, I think it could save our profession from a lot of people who get burned out,
Oh
and
yeah.
and then allow them to be more creative in their job and their work. And again, it should improve healthcare. It should
Yeah.
push stuff forward. So, I think physical therapy will do that in that capacity. And
Uh,
like you said that, and I didn't even think about it, but totally, I could see a scenario where, there's someone puts together a piece of software, and there's a lot of money to be made in these things because, if someone's like, I figured out how to do documentation, and you don't have to do your notes because AI is going to do it for you, and I think I even
yeah.
have seen some of those companies are starting to happen. That's dude, like people could jump all over that. It's awesome. And then on the flip side, like think about the reporting from an insurance perspective, right? So all of a
Yeah.
sudden, if I have to have my key KPIs for certain insurance documentation so that it gets justified to a company from an I can tell the
Mhm.
AI to make sure to optimize it so we actually get like
Yeah.
the most amount of visits and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? And
How
then it's
many
going to do that.
how many bills get sent back because it wasn't a appropriate, like the time box wasn't checked, or all these little things, and just to be able to do that would be great.
Exactly.
um and I mean, we can kind of, I think we'll come back around to content creation because um we are a podcast focusing on entrepreneurs and business owners in the
Yeah.
PT space. But even just to kind of piggyback off that, think of all the stuff that you could do in the physical space, right? So the front office, most of the front office job could be automated, at least to a level of, instead of needing 3 front office people, I can have one very good one, right? Because the other 2 are just on the phone, waiting. And the hope is, yeah, the insurance companies would have to kind of come on board too, to integrate with it, not just make you wait so that you hopefully give up.
Yeah.
But think about, you walk in, think of the experience of walking into a PT clinic in 5 years, right? How much is going to be changed or could be changed by AI, right?
Yeah.
I think I had this weird. I was talking with a tech on a cancellation, and it was the dumbest thing. But honestly, wouldn't be shocked if it happens. If they got one of those like heat sensing cameras where it doesn't see people's faces and it just counts reps for you, you
Yeah.
know. So his job would be gone. The tech's job would be gone. They just count reps, right?
Yeah.
And if it's a heat map, it'll see the form. So is it close enough? I mean, I don't know if I would want to practice in that, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like a clinic where you just like walk in and it just does everything with you. I
In
don't
New
know.
York City, right? In New York City, where
Oh my
you
god,
got to
yeah.
see that many patients. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You just walk in and it just like scans your body and then tells you to go over there, and it's all a computer.
Someone will figure it out. You know, it's crazy. It was crazy to your point. It just popped into my brain when it came to some of this stuff. Like when you think about what it can do in the physical space, we use a software called Welcomeware. And
Okay.
so essentially, if you think about virtual assistants, in these other countries are far less expensive. And
Yep.
so to use some hardware that essentially people can just schedule, like we've talked about it within some of our offices, and actually, thought process, oh, well, there's only 1 or 2 PTs in there that can schedule. And so they can just go on an iPad or something and schedule with somebody, and then you don't
Hmm.
have to actually have a physical person in there, and so it's a little less expensive for the clinic. Plus, it takes care of a lot of like the payments and whatnot and
Yeah.
scheduling. And there's obviously drawbacks to that because nothing will beat in a lot of ways like that physical person. But one of the things that we also have found was, say, in one of the clinics, like I got 4 to 5 physical therapists in there, and I have a really good office manager that's in there.
Yeah.
Instead of hiring a second office manager to help out with like scheduling, you put something that's welcomeware in there, and imagine all the stuff for like 5 or 6 patients, or 5 or 6
Yep.
patients every like 40 minutes, what we do, or every hour, half hour, however the clinic's set up, where they're just stuck freaking scheduling, scheduling,
Yeah.
scheduling.
Oh
Imagine if you
yeah.
just took that off their plate, and all
Yeah.
they have to do is concentrate on the stuff. So like that's a point where like AI will also start to kick in too, is like just how to make their job more efficient. So maybe it's not like eliminating every job or
Yeah.
eliminating certain jobs, but maybe what it's doing is making people more efficient so they can do more job tasks, right? And which
Well,
is
and
great.
this is where I think, part of this will kind of dovetail into our content creation kind of talk, but I'm envisioning this. I'm thinking, how well, not utopian, I guess dystopian sometimes, because I would want to do
Yeah.
it. But there's no people in there. There's maybe one therapist, but 20 patients because they've optimized ideally. It sounds like a really cold environment, right? It doesn't sound like a
Yeah.
warm, welcoming. And the danger of this stuff is that it'll go too far and patients won't choose that clinic because it'll feel like a sterile environment, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you come to AI, and going back to our using it as a tool versus using it as a fix, is you have to find ways to keep your own voice. You have to find ways to keep that feel in. And I think the clinic directors, the clinic owners that realize this, and how to thread that needle of enough to make it efficient and not annoying for my staff or my clients or my patients, but also not taking away from what makes us us, I think is going to be a big thing.
Yeah, I mean the
And
the personality of the clinic, to your point, right?
yeah,
The personality of the clinic that we have is from the people, right? It's not from the
yeah,
AI. The AI should support the people, and that's
yeah,
what's great about it. Like to your point, is it should only continue. I mean, look, AI can be used for bad in any scenario,
yeah,
just like the internet can be used for bad. I love that analogy you just used,
uh,
actually, the internet,
yeah,
because it'd be the equivalent of like, again, this is going to sound ridiculous because we've grown up with the internet, but the reality is like, I'm sure there were people that were like, well, the internet going to replace our jobs, like MDs, like you'll be able to look up all the diagnoses, like, yeah, but like that's also not what's going to happen, right? We also know how bad that is, right? Like,
yeah,
how many times have you had a
yeah,
patient that's like, I got cancer, and you're like, no, you don't. Like, right, like you're like
yeah,
it's just gout, or it's like, no,
yeah,
it's, you know what I mean, like it's like, so like there's so many things what ends up happening, and the same thing will happen with AI to a degree, probably, I would think to a little bit better technological aspect, but nevertheless, I think to your point about like the way you can utilize it for good is in a lot of different ways. And I think content creation is a really good one, like I was chatting about, where like I don't really write unless it's going to be two or three sentences. If I'm going to write like a lengthy piece of content, I'm going to have AI write it for me. And so
Yeah,
I'm going to make sure that it's going to take, because what's going to take me 20, 25, 30 minutes to crank out,
yeah.
ChatGPT is going to do it in 30 seconds. And so
Well,
it's it's a lot
I
easier for me
try
to edit it.
I tried this thing on the car the other day because I'm a mobile therapist, so I have half an hour where I'm listening to the same, I don't know, fantasy football podcast or whatever. And I said, man, this is unproductive time. Let's try this. So I did the note dictation or the text dictation. And
Yeah,
then I came in and got back home and I just went in ChatGPT and said, make this an article I could post on a blog. Something really basic. And I know there's really good ways to prompt it, which I don't know. But it made it way nicer of an article, but it said exactly what I wanted. And I spent no additional time than I otherwise would have
that's
spent.
awesome.
Right.
Yeah,
So, I didn't publish it because I didn't have time to go through it. I just was kind of just seeing if it worked. But that's going to be something that solopreneurs like me, and even all the way up to someone like you, where you have time, you're sitting in an airport waiting for a meeting, whatever it is, you could
yeah.
crank out something like that and do it. So
Yeah, man.
I thought that was kind
So
of cool.
I gave you an example, and sometimes I think what's going to be key, what's interesting about it is how you can talk back and forth. So
Yeah.
me and you talked about this in the pre-show, and I'll share it. But one of the things that I put in there, and I've tried different stuff. It's another good one for anybody who's looking for workout stuff. It'll
Yeah.
program workouts for you. So I've wrote in there
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
CrossFit style lower body workouts. So like this is one that I went back and forth. I want a CrossFit style workout with an emphasis on lower body strength and particularly quads. And then it wrote me a workout. And so you can
Yeah.
do that. So I've known people who are like, "Oh, I don't even do programming for my stuff anymore, like, because I'll just use ChatGPT for it."
Yeah.
One of the ones that I did that was really good was back and forth was, can you write me a caption for Facebook and Instagram advertising geared towards selling to people to join a gym who are afraid of getting injured? And then it gave me something, and then I wrote back to it. I was like, can you make it longer and point out we have three keys to success for injury prevention? We are physical therapists who oversee the fitness program. Every class is coached by a trained professional, and we help with nutrition. And
Mhm.
so it wrote me and then it wrote me something, and I wrote, can you expand it more? And then it wrote me something that was awesome. Like to the point where I was like, perfect. So the other part is to your point about like, I need to read it and edit it. Like then all of a sudden I just used itself to edit it. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden it starts to do that. And that's what's so, particularly powerful about this is it can chat with itself. And then
Hmm.
it's also a learning software. So it's learning what you're saying.
Hmm.
And what you like. So all of a sudden now it gets a little more efficient. And so I'm finding, with those workouts, sometimes what's amazing, sometimes I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that workout. I'm like, is that the AI doing that, or is that me being lazy? Right. Like, and so to
Yeah.
that point, like you can always edit stuff, you can change it. And that's what utilizing, I heard this from Gary Vaynerchuk, who Gary V said this at one point. He was like, the way that college students can utilize Chat GPT is like, write me something about the Ford Model T, write me a 2-page paper about the Ford Model T in this tone, representing this type of thought process. And like, it was just very interesting to me. I would think that like when we were in college, Owen, we were written a lot of papers with this thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
there's, oh my
100%.
God, right? And,
Well,
and so, and so it's,
but
it's interesting.
think of what it's saving though. I mean, the time of typing, the time of writing it
Yes.
out. If somebody was say if we were rich college kids, and I mean we knew a lot of rich college kids, but
We
they
did.
didn't do this. But you could afford to have somebody write down your dictation when you just talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And even the talking about it, you want it to be your own thoughts. So I mean, you're writing something, and then okay, make it sound fancy or whatever, but then the editing it, oh, I agree with that, I don't agree with that, or ooh, I don't like the way that flowed with this, or you would have had to do that too, and the writing part first, whereas this just kind of takes the writing part, shortens that time, and then you add your own voice to the end of it. So I
Exactly.
think I think it can be used nefariously if you think like your teacher doesn't have a plagiarizing software.
Yes.
But at the other side of it for this, where you're trying to communicate your world with patients or with
Yeah.
potential
I,
customers.
I think about this thought process to your point about going back to the good and bad piece of AI is I think there's a synergistic relationship between the two. And so
Yeah.
I remember thinking about, I think it was around the atomic bomb, to be honest, was they were talking about the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb, and they were talking about how the research was for good in a lot of ways, but obviously
Mm,
pressing it was also the need to control the bad. And because the two of them were pushing each other on a constant basis, it skyrocketed the science so quickly. And I think the
mm,
exact same thing will happen is, the good and the bad of AI will push one another, so it'll improve
mm,
the technology so quickly. And I think that's guys like what Elon Musk worry about in terms of regulation, which I totally understand, because I think that's something where, like, look at it, something then with the atomic bomb, for that point, something catastrophic happened, and depending on what side you were on, it was
mm.
catastrophic, good or bad, right? Like, it ended a war, but it also killed millions of people. So
Yeah.
I think that's where the same kind of thing with AI is. It can be this thing that we've learned as a society, we only learn things the hard way. So I think
Yeah.
there's obviously clearly many bad things that AI done. So I think in physical therapy, I think it's really, if you focus on a lot of the positives, it should have a really positive impact in terms of the ability to save you time.
So let's throw out some of those things, right? So I've thought of a few things that I've used where I'm those tips, those tricks, something that someone listening to this podcast can maybe try in the next week. And the dictation thing, I love that. I tweak it, right?
Yep.
Even things, I mean, God, even as worse as I have to put out some Instagram reels. Give me 7 reel ideas that I could film,
Yeah.
in you know
Yeah.
with my voice, right? Um, God, I haven't even messed with the video, the deep fake thing, so I'm not even going to touch on that.
Yeah.
But so those would be my kind of two things that I've messed with recently. And then, of course, obviously, when you're writing a blog post to increase your SEO, is there anything that you really can see, or one thing that you really want to highlight that somebody could say, "Man, I could do that today."
Yeah, I mean, I think you can download the app and start playing with it. And one of the things I just put in there just to see was, I was like, what are the most watched physical therapy related videos on Instagram? And I just plugged it in there. And so you can even ask it questions on research. So, right?
Oh,
So,
like
like,
market research.
yeah, so, like, as of my last knowledge update in September 2021, right? I don't have real-time data on the most watched physical therapy related videos. However, you can visit Instagram and search physical therapy related hashtags. And so it's going to teach you, right? So
Yeah.
obviously this was not the
So it's not
greatest.
a consulting firm.
So it's not, well, but even you can, but again, it's going to point you in a direction. You can check out popular physical therapy influencers on accounts on Instagram that regularly share educational and engaging content related to physical therapy. Cool,
Yeah.
right? Like, it'll give you ideas. And so you could even ask it, we could even say, what are the best ways physical therapists can utilize AI, right?
Should I play the Jeopardy music?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I know this made it kind of lame at that point, but
Hey, it's
here you
great
go. So then it
audio.
just spit back to your point about marker research. It's spitting all these things out, right? And like rapid fire. And actually, to your point, so here's how you can utilize it. And you can utilize AI various ways to enhance practice and improve patient care. So personalized treatment plans, AI can help physical therapists analyze patient data such as medical history, imaging, to your point. Movement analysis, you talked about the infrared. So also, like, if someone's on a treadmill, like the way it would work, right?
Yeah.
Rehabilitation monitoring, I think that's similar to what you were talking about, putting people
Yeah.
out. Predictive analytics, I think that's a big one that we're going to start doing, is we're going to see how it optimizes in research, right? There's going to be a lot more. One of the things that I always think is as you become a better physical therapist, that you become better at, like, this is what's going to happen when we do this, and this is what could
Yeah.
potentially happen, and this is so it's going to start doing that, right? And you talk about telehealth and remote monitoring. It talks about assisted devices. So again, integrated AI can be integrated into assisted devices such as exoskeletons or prosthetics, right?
Oh, yeah. I've
Right.
worked
That's
with
a
one of
crazy
those.
idea. Didn't even think about that.
The exoskeletons are so cool.
AI is helping us figure out how AI is going to work, right? Exactly,
Yeah.
like that kind of patient education. So, like, there's another one, like, so AI powered chatbots or virtual things where, like,
Uh,
we could develop those tools, right? And then administrative tasks, to your point. So, oh, we covered the majority of them. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I think this is where AI would be super helpful, and what people can do right now is just play with it and figure out, how can it help me, right? I have no idea
Yeah.
how it can help me, but it's a chatbot that's going to essentially have updates, that's going to consistently work in your favor. So that's the idea behind what this thing's going to do.
Well, and as you can see, we did not use it to write this episode. So,
No,
uh,
nice.
on that bombshell, we leave you.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it.
Right.
And I'll
All
leave you
right.
with this real quick, because I use the line, but my friend John, I love it. He has a tagline, and I think this is really good for people to learn. And the tagline for AI, right? It's AI won't replace you. but someone utilizing AI will. And I thought that's a really good way to look at it, right? Like we chatted about it. I love that. And like I said, if people are interested in this, we'll have John on because he's somebody who will definitely chat with us about it.
Yeah, and if you're interested in learning more, we do have our school mentorship, the front row back row mentorship up and running. We already have a few people in the group, which is amazing. And Brian will start working on some content for that, some specific classes. I know he was giving me a sneak peek on one of the marketing strategies he likes to use. So if you want to check that out, it will be linked in the YouTube video, and I think I can put it on the Apple Podcasts and Spotify
Sweet.
descriptions too. So it's free right now. Just really trying to get a good community going of like-minded entrepreneurs and people in the strength and conditioning and the physical therapy and the medical and whatever space. Just people who want
Yeah.
to learn and push the envelope.
And take advantage of it now, because right now we don't have a lot of content, but it's free, and eventually we are going to charge for it as we put a bunch of content on there. So if and it's
We'd be
content that'll
bad
make you
business.
money, so that's why we're going to charge you. Exactly,
We'd be bad business people if we didn't. I don't know.
exactly.
I'm
So it's
figuring
not going to
people
be
who
free
listen.
forever.
That's
Yeah,
it. People who listen to this probably know how podcasts work, where you get good information, but we try and get you to pay for something.
exactly.
It'll eventually be that.
But that
See,
stuff will be good.
business
That stuff
tip.
will be that stuff will at least make you money, so that'll be good. It'll make you more money than we'll charge you, and that's the art of the art of the business.
Well, yeah, like you were saying, somebody who gave you a 10-minute talk said, "I probably just made you $1,000,"
Yeah,
and he did. And
exactly.
you
And he
paid
did. He
like,
made me
and you
five.
paid like, yeah, and you paid what, like 500 for it, and he made you five. That's a good return. So
Exactly, exactly. That's the
yeah,
idea. It's all about the numbers game, right?
there you go.
Make more than you spend.
There you go. All right, that'll do me. You good,
Sounds
Brian?
good, man. Thanks,
All
bud.
right.
This is good.
Have a good one, everybody.